Okay, I'm seeing a bunch of problems with how people are approaching creating their Logseq graph. So I just want to go over why people are probably doing this and the reasons behind it. Like, I'm not going to condemn anybody because I've done the exact same things as well. However, there are better ways that we should be approaching creating, modeling our Logseq graphs. So I've seen some bug reports on the Logseq repo that indicate that people don't really understand the ontology behind Logseq, like how you should be using the features that exist, and instead of trying to get the developers to change how Logseq operates, and they're basically just trying to apply a model that doesn't really fit Logseq. So what do I mean by that? And this especially concerns the Markdown refugees as well. So for example, the Markdown version of Logseq is not opinionated, right? It's very freeform. You can create some, funky data model however which way you want. The problem with that is that it just lives inside your own head, and it's not really useful in the real world. So for example, you could create, say, a property of status and assign it to done. And somewhere else in Logseq, you could assign the status again, and you could put complete instead. This might work for you, but you got to think about how this stuff accumulates over time. All of these little things, and you're basically, trying to create some data model ad hoc as you create your graph, instead of stopping, the ironic people trying to overthink and create these complex data models and stuff is that they don't really need them. I mean, it's so unnecessary. So by overthinking or not thinking in the right way to begin with, they are creating a very big headache for themselves. And the Markdown version doesn't ever stop you and say, hold on, this is going to cause problems or anything like that. And there's also the problem that people are, I think people have the wrong idea, and they are trying to apply data models that are meant for machines, and then they're trying to apply that to themselves. But that's not how we work, and that's not how things should work, right? You're just making it harder for yourself. So the Markdown version, the model that you create in the Markdown version is literally just relying on your memory and your ability to search. So if you can remember exactly how you modeled everything, it might work for you. But the problem is that all you're doing is delaying the technical debt. It's like the technical debt is just it's forever delayed. I mean, you may never get to the point where you need to confront what you've created. And I'm the same, right? So I never really thought about this. Before using the database version, I never put too much thought. I mean, I'd put some thought into it, but I didn't think about deeply. So there's one question that you should ask yourself before you start creating any model, or creating properties and classes and all the rest of it, and trying to overcomplicate things before you've even begun. And that is, how am I going to query this? You need to ask yourself honestly, like, you have to be honest with yourself, and you ask, like, am I going to query this? How many times am I going to query this? How am I going to query this? And should I give some example? And you should build it, so you should have some sort of conceptual understanding about what's happening. So I've seen people try to extend tags that don't really make sense to extend. They're connecting unrelated stuff, basically. And we'll use the address for an example in this, because this is one that I saw as a concrete example of somebody wanting something but not really understanding what they actually want and how they're actually going to use it. So in the Markdown version, we could assign a property, say address, and we could say like 12 Main Street, Stockholm, right? And this is just plain text, right? So if you're imagining what the Markdown file will look like, it literally will look like this. It will have this in the top of the Markdown file. So it won't have a bullet point next to it. It'll literally just be this part here. But when you start creating this type of stuff in Markdown, in the database version, because the database version is opinionated, it has types and everything else, but you've really got to ask yourself, like, how am I going to be querying this? How will I query this address? Perhaps you will want to know how many people you know that live in Stockholm. It's very, very, very unlikely that you will ever query even a specific street. So it's times like this that you really have to be honest with yourself and ask, like, okay, what am I actually trying to achieve? What will I query when it comes to an address? So if we now create a person tag, this is the way that I would approach this, right? I mean, this is how 80% of people are going to use this. And so if we configure a person, you should literally just create a address property of type text, right? This is literally how 80 or more % of people are going to use this. Now, there is another way that you could approach this. I think we've pretty much already established that people aren't going to be searching, or how many people do I know that live on this street? I mean, you're going to be in the minority if you are going to query for something like that. So the only other use case that I can think of is to add a property of city, or let's use city just for the example. So if we create one for city, and then we make that type node, and we'll skip choosing, hang on, no, I'm editing the wrong thing here. So if we go to the person, and we include the city, and we configure properties, that's type node. We won't put multiple values, and because I can think of a use case where this might not work so well. So let's just say like Stockholm. Oh no, that's the description. We don't need that. Okay, and then if we go back to our John Smith entry, now we will have city, and we can set the city to, let's just capitalize it for the sake of this. So new option, Stockholm. And then we can remove Stockholm from here. And here you could put the suburb, for example. Maybe, if you're really stretching, you could probably do the same thing with suburb. But you got to remember that the more drilled down you get, the less likely you are to querying about this sort of stuff. And you are creating more complexity than necessary for no real added benefit, and you're not even going to use it. But if you use this Stockholm thing, maybe you can set up a query. So if we go to, say, why is it no? Interesting. Why isn't that showing up? City property. That's weird. Why is that not showing up? If we go here, it's only a property. Let's create another page for Jane Smith, the person tag, and Jane lives on 18 Grand Avenue, but she also lives in Stockholm. So why don't I get any query results here? Hang on. Because we didn't. Okay. Stockholm is a city, so we need to add that one to our list, but we're still not getting any search results here. We go to Stockholm. What's our graph here look like? City, person, journal. John Smith is a person. Stockholm is a city. So it's recognizing the relationship here. So both Jane Smith and John Smith live in Stockholm, which is a city, right? What if we What if we create a reference here? Go to that page. Query. Okay, so if we set up, am I on the, so we can set up one for property, city, select all. Okay. Okay, so I don't know why I had to set up an explicit query for that, but I mean, it works. Okay, so you could have a bunch of different cities listed here, and then you could either sort by this or sort by, you know, that's going to sort by that. I mean, this is what most people are going to use. Okay, and if you start putting in like, because you think about like each step that you drill further in detail, you have to think about more stuff, and it has to become this like all-encompassing behemoth, just so that you can run one query or, you know, find one result one time, which it doesn't make any sense. So again, like it's going to depend on your use case, but for the most part, you're not going to use most of this. Okay, and I mean, another way that you could do it is if we go to address here, there's a, sorry, not address, it's under person, right? So another way you could approach it, if you really wanted to, would be to create, you could technically, actually now this query box is showing up. It's kind of like I needed to wake this up. I don't know why I had to specifically query this. Doesn't feel like the default behavior. It's weird. All right, let's try a different one. So we'll create address as tag. So we'll create our person tag, but then we'll also create an address tag, and within the address tag, then we will have the properties. So we'll have, and it again, like this is more to highlight the increased complexity that you have to worry about for very, very minimal value, like you're not getting anything. So I was thinking now, for example, to include like the number. So you would have, like, say, for example, house number, but not everybody lives in a house. Some people live in apartments, you know, and there are different categories. Like, you know, we're thinking about like, then you have to think about like a business address versus a personal address is going to come across different. And then like, how do you handle, so you've got the house number, but some house numbers include a letter. So for an apartment, like, that is kind of a house that's split in two apartments, for example, right? One side will be, say, like 1A, and the other side will be, how are you going to handle all of this? Because if you let's just create house number and then assign this as a number, or you could assign it as text to be a bit more free form, but you know, you don't want a bunch of, let's just keep it simple for now. So we'll do house number as a number strictly, and then we will do street name. So you can, it depends on how you want to do it, but I mean, you could do it as node if you wanted to keep track of a whole bunch of different streets. So I'll show you how that would work. So we'll skip choosing the tag now, and we'll keep configuring this. What else is in an address? So the house number, the street name, and then city, like we had before. We will also create that as a node. So this is an extreme example, and I don't expect there's going to be like anyone that is going to use it in this way. I really just want you to see. So we could do this. This extends person technically. So if we now create John Smith, go in there, attach the person. Okay, and this isn't working as expected either. So I don't know if these, hang on, let me just shut this down, close, and then reopen, because I feel like it's not working as it should, even now. So if we go into John Smith, go into person, okay, so maybe we have to do node here, and then address as the specify node tag. Let's see if that made any difference. Okay, so that's good. That's what? Okay, so this isn't set address. So this is just going to be a node. Why is this just a, oh, it shows up in our graph view now. Journal person. What? Configure tag extends person. How it should be working is it should be actually taking all of these properties and attaching it to the person. Okay, so that approach won't work. So what you would have to do is actually attach. Okay, I think I'm starting to understand the other person's perspective who was trying to set this stuff up. So what you might have to do is attach. We're gonna remove this. We're gonna delete this property node here. Whoa, what the hell? Go to the person tag. We're gonna remove address from here. Delete that property. And then we'll say, like, just to make it a bit more realistic, so we'll have date of birth, just so we have an extra property so you can see what's happening here. So if we go here, okay, John Smith is a person, and John Smith also has an address. So this I think is the way that it should work. Main street. So this is one way that you could do this, right? So you could have Main Street, and then I'll show you how to work for Jane. And we'll say Stockholm, and then date of birth is going to be 1970, 1st of January. So this is one way, because the use case that I was taking this from, and I did a little bit of research on it, is they were trying to, I think, assign an end to either a person or a business. And this is a simple way that could be resolved if you wanted to go about it that way. So let's create now Jane Smith. So Jane Smith is person, and Jane Smith has an address and house number in street name. So we can say, I don't know, Overgrown Avenue. City, also Stockholm. Date of birth, Jane is a bit younger, 1st of July, 2000. So this is how it would work, right? And then if we want to query addresses, then we just go to the address tag, and you can see all of the addresses there. And so you could query by city. So you could, let's add another city here. So if we create another person, Sven, so Sven Svensson, right? And then you can highlight that. I was just going to show you a different way that you can create pages. So you literally can do that. Sven Svensson is a person and has an address, and their house number is, where do they live? I don't know. Street name. 27 Skullgarten. It's already got the street name embedded in there. And this one we can say Göteborg, date of birth. Gonna party like Sven Svensson in 1999. And then if we go to address tag, and now we can see all three people here. And if we want to then query, who do we know lives in Göteborg? Why is that not showing up? City. Okay, so I was doing it the hard way. So if we just click on the filter, then go to city, and then we can filter only the people who live in Göteborg. So this is one way that you could use this. It's still, unless you're creating a CRM or something like that, you're not going to be using this system, right? And it's better, it's underdevelop something and then build it out as you find new use cases for it, rather than try and build this, behemoth of a system that's, on some weird schema.org model that, is designed for machines rather than how people search things. So this is a realistic use case, right? So if you want to search by address, again, you can go to address, you can click on this filter here, go to city, and this time we'll do just Stockholm. We have to close the Göteborg one. So there you go. So you can filter by who lives in Stockholm. And you could even, because we created the street name, a node, you can even filter by those as well, if need be. But who's going to use that? How many people do you realistically know that you are ever going to use street name as a database filter? And you really have to be honest with yourself when it comes to this stuff. But the problem is it gets the more stuff that you want to include, the more complicated it gets. So you really have to think about, what elements do I need for this entity? What is a person? So for me, I have quite a few properties here in my main graph dictating stuff like eye color and height and stuff like that, just because I'm terrible at remembering some stuff. So it's useful info, but again, like, I'm not going to put that for everybody. It's just going to be people in my close circle. And the example also mentioned postal address as well. I don't think that's really going to be useful to split between address and postal address. It's because, I mean, you can assign, say we create a company name, all right? Because this was the other use case, company LLC. Okay, and then in here, instead of attaching the person tag and the address tag, we simply add the address tag. And then you fill out the information as before, and the company has an address, but it's not, a company isn't a person. A company may have people, so you might actually want to have a company tag, right? So if we create company tag here, and then you can keep track of all the different companies, and then also you could attach this to the person tag, right? So date of birth, let's just say like works at node, then we will choose company here. So works at should be specified node company. So then when we go into here, works at, and then we will, and there you go. So this shows up as an option. So, oh yeah, John Smith works at company LLC, right? So we could query this as well. Yeah, there you go. And it shows up automatically here. So works at, the works at property. So it's going to be blank for obviously the ones that we didn't fill out, but the one that we did fill out is there, and that's, useful. So, I mean, you could technically use this to build out a CRM system, but I mean, for most people, when you're just taking notes and stuff, you have to think about the friction when you're trying to add something. So if you meet a person somewhere, for example, and you say you've got your phone on you, are you realistically going to be sitting there and asking them all of this information and stuff like that? I mean, this is going to be reserved for people that you've known for quite a while, and you're quite familiar with, and maybe you've visited their house. Maybe you go to a barbecue or something at their house. So the chances of you using this, I mean, you could by all rights, you could create a CRM system in Logseq, and maybe I'll create a video on how to do that as well, because that could be quite useful for people. I've considered it myself, so I may do that in the future. But you have to, at the end of the day, you've got to think about what is going to work for you and what you're actually going to use. Because under modeling has a cost and over modeling has a cost as well. They both have a cost. You just have to understand what risks you want to accept, and you don't always have to be as minimal as possible in your approach to creating a model for your Logseq graph. You should put some thought into it, but at the same time, you don't need to build out some complex system if you're just going to keep track of 3 people in your life. Like, I mean, you're already going to know all of the information about those 3 people, and it's not going to be worth building this complex system, just to, it's more about ego, right? Oh, I built this thing and, I'm super proud of it, whatever. So really, just to sum up the video, ask what you will query, build for that, and then stop. You don't need to go any further. If there's a time where you record something a couple of times and you legitimately query it a few times, then build that part. Don't build some massive system unnecessarily. All right. Hopefully you got some value out of that. See ya.